Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to take you on a journey through one of the most fascinating periods in history. Today, we'll explore a journey into the end of ancient Rome and the dawn of the Middle Ages. We'll look at how the Western Roman Empire collapsed and what that meant for the world. Over the next slides, we'll uncover the key events, figures, and changes that shaped this pivotal era. Let's get started. A turning point, 395 AD. This moment was truly a pivotal point in history because it marked the beginning of a gradual decline for the Western Roman Empire. After 395 AD, the empire was no longer unified under a single ruler, but was permanently divided between his two sons, Arcadius and Honorius. This division made the empire more vulnerable to external pressures and internal instability. It's important to note that Theodosius was the last emperor to rule over a united Roman Empire, symbolizing the end of an era. This split set the stage for the eventual fall of the Western Roman Empire, which ties into our overall theme of how internal divisions contributed to its decline. So, when we look at the tale of two empires, one of the key differences lies in their wealth and location. The Western Empire, for example, had two major frontiers that they needed to guard, the Rhine and the Danube. These natural borders were crucial, but they also posed significant defensive challenges. On the other hand, the Eastern Empire had a different strategy. They could buy off barbarians when needed, essentially paying them off to avoid conflict until they were strong enough to fight back. This approach reflects the East's ability to use diplomacy and wealth to manage threats, rather than just relying on military might alone. Geography played a significant role here. The East was generally wealthier, mainly because it had older civilizations and well-established trade routes that contributed to its prosperity. These trade routes facilitated the movement of goods, ideas, and culture, making the East richer and more connected. Overall, these geographic and strategic differences helped shape the distinct paths each empire took, with the West focusing on frontier defense and the East leveraging trade and wealth to maintain stability. This contrast is a vital part of understanding their historical trajectories and how geography influenced their development. Now, let's look at what I like to call a WEAKNED shield. This metaphor really captures how Rome's defenses started to crumble. One of the main issues was the decline of the army itself. Tribal leaders, instead of focusing on defending Rome, often jostled for power among themselves, which left the empire vulnerable. By around 400 AD, half of the Western Roman army was made up of Germanic soldiers. That's a huge shift in the makeup of the forces that once protected Rome. Additionally, depopulation played a big role. Fewer native Romans meant it became much harder to recruit new soldiers from the local population. All these factors combined to weaken the empire's ability to defend itself effectively. This decline in military strength is a crucial part of understanding how Rome's power waned over time, making it more susceptible to invasions and internal chaos. So, what really happened during the fall of the Roman Empire? Well, it's important to understand that the entry of the so-called barbarians wasn't just a sudden, catastrophic wave. Instead, it often occurred when Roman legions were pulled away to deal with invasions elsewhere or internal revolts. This created openings, vulnerabilities that these groups exploited. Romans also sometimes made the mistake of letting in individuals or entire tribes willingly, thinking they could be integrated or used as allies. A notable example is the Visigoths in 376 AD, who were allowed to settle within the empire's borders. But what's crucial to grasp is that the collapse wasn't a quick, single event. It was a gradual process, an infiltration from within that slowly eroded the empire's strength over time. And there's a common myth that it was just one disastrous wave that brought everything down. But that's an oversimplification. The reality is much more complex, involving layers of internal and external pressures building up gradually. Understanding this helps us see the fall of Rome not as a sudden catastrophe, but as a long, unfolding process shaped by strategic decisions and systemic vulnerabilities. Now, let's look at what is often called the first major crack in the Roman Empire, the Battle of Adrianople. This event was a turning point because it demonstrated that the Roman army was no longer invincible. In 378 AD, the Visigoths rebelled against Roman authority and managed to destroy a Roman army, which was a huge blow. Tragically, Emperor Valens was killed during this battle, marking a significant moment of vulnerability for Rome. It's also important to understand the background here. Back in 376 AD, the Visigoths had entered the Roman Empire to escape the Huns, seeking refuge. Unfortunately, they were mistreated by Roman officials, which led to resentment and rebellion. This mistreatment and the subsequent conflict highlight how internal weaknesses and poor treatment of allies or refugees contributed to Rome's decline. Overall, this slide underscores how these events, the rebellion, the defeat, and the death of an emperor, signaled that Rome's dominance was waning, setting the stage for further challenges ahead. This slide is about one of the most shocking moments in history, the sacking of Rome. Imagine, Rome had not been taken in over 800 years, so when this event happened in 410 AD, it truly stunned the world. The forces led by King Alaric of the Visigoths entered the city and raided it, causing widespread shock and fear. What's important to understand here is that Alaric's goal wasn't just destruction. He was seeking recognition and rewards. He wanted Roman titles and lands for his people, which reflects the broader struggles between the Goths and the Roman Empire over power and territory. This event marks a turning point in history, highlighting the weakening of Rome's dominance and the shifting balance of power in Europe. It's a key moment that connects to our overall theme of the decline and transformation of the Roman Empire. In 455 AD, the Vandals, a Germanic tribe, sacked Rome, and this event was even more brutal than the previous Visigothic attack. This invasion had serious consequences, not just for Rome, but for the entire Mediterranean region. When the Vandals took control of the area, it disrupted crucial trade routes that had sustained the empire for centuries. This loss of trade drained Rome's resources and weakened its economic stability. Furthermore, the Vandals conquered North Africa, which was a vital source of grain for Rome. With North Africa under Vandal control, Rome's grain supply was cut off, leading to shortages and further destabilizing the empire. This chapter in history highlights how the loss of key territories and the disruption of trade contributed significantly to the decline of the Western Roman Empire. It's a clear example of how external invasions and the loss of strategic regions can accelerate an empire's downfall, fitting into our overall theme of how external pressures and internal weaknesses led to Rome's fall. Now let's talk about Attila the Hun, often called the Scourge of God, a figure whose actions truly shaped the late Roman Empire. When Attila died, his death sparked chaos among his subject tribes, who then turned their focus against a Rome already in decline. This internal unrest made Rome's position even more precarious. Despite these challenges, Rome did manage to score a final victory against the Huns, and interestingly, they did this through an alliance with the Visigoths. This alliance highlights how Rome was forced to adapt and form strategic partnerships even in its weakened state. However, it wasn't all victories. Attila was notorious for demanding enormous tributes from Rome, which further drained Rome's already strained economy. These tributes were a heavy burden that underscored the increasing pressures Rome faced from external threats and internal weaknesses. All of these points connect back to our overarching theme. The decline of Rome was driven by a combination of external invasions and internal vulnerabilities, with figures like Attila playing a pivotal role in accelerating that decline. While the Western Roman Empire was collapsing, it's important to remember that the Byzantine Empire in the East actually managed to survive for many more centuries. One of the last officially recognized emperors was Julius Nepos, who died in exile around 480 AD. His death marked a significant turning point, as it signaled the end of any remaining strong claims to imperial authority in the West. Meanwhile, in Italy, Germanic generals had taken control and started installing puppet emperors very quickly. These figures were often just figureheads, with real power concentrated in the hands of these military leaders. This period, from 476 to 480 AD, is known as the final collapse of the Western Roman Empire. It's a crucial moment in history because it signifies the fall of the Western Roman political structure, but it also highlights how the Eastern Empire, or Byzantium, continued on. So even as the West fell apart, the East held on, maintaining continuity and stability for centuries to come. This contrast really underscores the different paths these regions took after the fall of Rome. So Napoleon finally declared the Roman Empire dead back in 1806, but interestingly, this was really about making space for his own ambitions, which were very much in the Roman style. He wanted to revive that grandeur, that sense of empire, to legitimize his power. Now, going way back to 800 AD, the idea of empire was reborn with the Holy Roman Empire. It lasted for over 1,000 years, which is pretty remarkable. Despite the name, it wasn't a direct continuation of ancient Rome, but it carried on many of its ideals and symbols. What's fascinating is that when tribes invaded parts of the former empire, they weren't necessarily aiming to destroy Rome. Instead, many of them wanted to become part of it legally. They sought Roman titles and recognition, which shows how deeply the idea of Rome had become embedded in the concept of power and legitimacy. This all ties into the main theme of our presentation. The idea of Rome, the symbol of authority, culture, and empire, never truly died. Even after the fall of the Western Roman Empire, its legacy persisted through these transformations, revivals, and adaptations over centuries. Now, as we reach the end of our journey through history, let's look at the beginning of the Middle Ages, often called the dawn of this new era. This was a time when the legacy of Rome didn't simply disappear. Instead, it transformed and lived on in different forms. During this period, the Franks emerged as a dominant tribe, playing a crucial role in shaping Western civilization. They acted as a bridge between the fall of Rome and the development of medieval Europe, helping to preserve and adapt many Roman traditions. However, it's important to also recognize that this era was marked by significant upheaval. The so-called Dark Ages set in as central Roman authority dissolved, leading to a period of decentralization and uncertainty across the West. All of these points connect back to our overall theme of transformation, how societies adapt and evolve, even after the fall of a mighty empire. The dawn of the Middle Ages was truly a pivotal moment, laying the groundwork for the future development of Europe.